Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Bruin Dash, the UCLA football and basketball show on Dash Sports TV. My name is Sam Connon. I'm joined once again by my wonderful co-host, Jack Perez. Jack, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Sam. New semester started here at UCLA. Looking forward to it and looking forward to talking about a little bit more football and a lot more basketball with you.
Definitely looking forward to it. We'll break it all down for everyone here. It's been a couple of weeks off for us because of the holidays. Football wrapped up in that time, and National Signing Day, everything going on there. Basketball looking pretty well. We're going to keep it on football today, but just to let you guys know, we will be continuing with the show at this time slot, Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific, moving forward to talk mostly basketball after we wrap up football today, but we'll throw in a little UCLA football every now and then when something happens. But for now, we're just going to close up shop on the football season. It's been a few weeks since the Stanford loss. We've kind of gathered ourselves, back-to-back crazy losses to end the year, but overall, it was a 3-4 season for UCLA, and it was up and down, roller coaster mess. We'll break that down, start to finish, everything going on there. Recruiting, like I said, National Signing Day a couple of weeks ago. The UCLA also got a big commitment from a 4-star yesterday and signed 3 transfers today, so we'll break that down. And then the overall takeaways from the season, what the depth chart could be looking like moving forward, who's in what kind of position, who could make a leap next year, anything like that, we'll break it down. And just want to say, if you're watching live, please contribute your thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, everything in the comments, and let us know, and we'll make sure to get to all those if you're watching live. So without further ado, we're going to break down this wild ride that was 2020 UCLA football. Quarterback room was chaotic just because of COVID and injuries and stuff like that towards the end of the year. Running back room was crowded but talented. So, Jack, I just want to have you pick your favorite, maybe not the best, but the most interesting position group that you saw in 2020 and what you really got out of them covering the team.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you have to go with the tight ends. The Greg Dulcich just balled out this year. He was so amazing. I mean, he led the Pac-12 in a lot of the receiving categories. All of a sudden, he just bursted out. And UCLA has a tradition of good tight ends. They've had like the Devin Asiasis. They've had other really good people in that.
Wilson, Mercedes Lewis.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but what Greg Dulcich did on a team honestly, he didn't have that spring training and he only had that short and fall camp. I thought he really busted out and proved that he was the number one option. And he's coming back probably again for another year. A lot of UCLA players are, and that's a great thing for this team. You need that consistency. But if he comes back and performs at the same level that he did last year, there's no reason that he can't improve even further and become truly almost the number one option. I mean, he was the number one option for a lot of this year, and he could be the number one option again next year in a group that should see improvements in the running back room, other than the fact that Dimitri Felton's leaving. A lot of those guys are coming back and just going to be improving. And the wide receivers, they all looked a lot better this year. But with a guy like Greg Dulcich out there, DTR has a number one option every single time he's going to throw the ball.
Yeah, I mean, Dulcich was great. Just to break down the stats quickly, he played in all 7 games. He had 517 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns, 26 catches. That's all great. Led all Pac-12 tight ends in all 3 categories. He was towards the top, like you said, receivers or tight ends. So I think he got robbed first team tight end by Cade Otton. I know some people say that Otton's a bit of a better blocker, but when you have Dulcich's stat line as a receiving tight end, that's just top. So I think that you really just have the top tight end in the conference at that point. So I have to say and I guess Jack just had to back up for a sec, got disconnected, but I will start breaking down what I think was the most interesting position. Obviously, Joshua Kelly was gone, and there wasn't much of a spring camp or even much over the summer or fall to really decide what would happen next. They had Dimitri Felton, who everyone knew was going to be a top weapon for UCLA. Welcome back, Jack. So Felton, everyone knew was an all-around, all-purpose threat. and he really hit everything he needed. He lived up to all the potential, everything on that. He got tripped up injuries towards the end of the year, had to sit out the last game. So it was what it was. The real reason that the running back group is the most interesting one to me is because Britton Brown absolutely killed it. He had 543 yards, which is, I mean, you add in the 84 receiving, that's 627 yards in 7 games, so 90 yards from scrimmage per game and 5 touchdowns. And this is the second option. Get over 200 yards against Stanford in the finale. And it's going to be great to see that moving forward. But just in 2020 alone, I loved having the do-it-all kind of guy in Felton, and then the bruiser and Britton Brown, and then you even threw Keaton Jones in there sometimes. And I know people were upset about how he was used against USC, but overall, when he wasn't out on the COVID list and everything, he was effective as well. So Demetric Felton's gone, so it's the second year in a row UCLA is going to be losing its top running back, but the same way you had Felton come in last year and you just trusted him, I trust Brown the same way. So it was interesting in 2020 and it'll be interesting moving forward.
Yeah, and you talk about the running backs. I mean, we know now that Casimir Allen not only was part of that contact tracing group, but then he got COVID himself, and that basically took him out for the rest of the year. Martell Irby was dealing with injuries at the beginning of the year. That running back group can improve greatly next year, even though you don't have that Demetric Felton. Chip Kelly can prove that he could do a running back by committee, and they obviously have DTR or Chase Griffin, both dual threat guys that looked good in the running game every single time they touched the ball. I mean, you saw a couple of big hurdles from DTR, and I mean, that dude can run like no one else. I mean, design some more runs for them, get them going on the ground, and it's just going to open up the passing game even more.
Yeah, and I want to use that to kind of segue into the quarterbacks. I know it's not really controversy, but I think it's been built up by some people and a lot of fans. The Chase Griffin versus DTR, and then you have Ethan Garbers coming in as a transfer from Washington, but we'll get to that when it comes to recruiting and everything. But that quarterback, the committee, because DTR was out for some time and because of injury and COVID tests. Still, I mean, DTR completed 65% of his passes, Chase Griffin 60, and also just under 65%. They're both over 150 for passer rating. Most of that came in the finale for Chase Griffin. He really wasn't a world breaker in his 2 earlier games, but still, the two of them combined had a very efficient season. 18 touchdowns and 16 picks, so they both had a 3-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, which is great to see. I know both of them had some trouble with fumbles. DTR, it's a longer term thing, and he came down on the turnovers. But still, the two of them combined were very efficient. DTR is a much more talented runner, and I think passer as well. He's got better size, so I think he's pretty easily the option moving forward. I think everyone who's kind of in and around the team just accepts that and knows that. Chase is a great backup, and he's a good team player, but you really saw a lot from DTR this year. And when you bring in more look at his running stats just through the roof. He really, statistically, his freshman year, you saw the athleticism, but you didn't see his running stats show up on the box score. Last year, he still took too many sacks for the stats to really pop out. But this year, he broke out big runs in multiple games on multiple occasions. He was avoiding sacks. He was throwing the ball away. So you really saw what his ability to run could do for him as a passer. Like you said, if you make him run even more and more efficiently and break bigger plays, that's only going to help him passing the ball. And I'm really looking forward to that because you saw just the leap he made in both categories this year.
Yeah, and I really want to emphasize your point about avoiding sacks and throwing the ball away, because the year before he had 21 turnovers and it killed UCLA a lot of times. And this year you saw in that Colorado game, even a little bit against USC, maybe not as much, but turnovers cost them. Taking sacks cost the team. And even when Chase Griffin got into the games against Oregon, turnovers were costing them. Cutting back on that is a huge, huge thing. And DTR is only going to get smarter from here on out. If he can have the same amount of turnovers next year in a full season than that he did this last year, he's going to be probably the best quarterback in the conference, if not one of the best quarterbacks in the country, because he is so athletically gifted that if he just doesn't make those mental mistakes, he's he's one of the best. You can't. I mean, there's a reason this guy was ranked number 2 in the dual threat category coming out of high school, even though he really only played one season at quarterback for his high school. This guy is amazing. But when you look at both DTR and Chase Griffin, it's astounding to see what Chip Kelly has been able to do with this quarterback room. Because remember, we thought that Colson Yankoff was probably going to be the number 2, and he must have seen some writing on the wall that DTR maybe was coming back, that Chase Griffin had earned that spot and moved to the wide receiver room. And he, once DTR leaves, might be the most talented quarterback on the team at wide receiver. So it really speaks volume to how good this team could be. I mean, there's still Parker McQuarrie waiting in the wings. This was, a year that basically he couldn't do anything. You've got Garbers, like you said, coming in. It's going to be really interesting to see, but there's no controversy here. This is DTR's team. Now, whether he can stay healthy for a full year, which he hasn't been able to do just yet. I mean, this last year, the COVID games weren't his fault that he missed those because he just was put in isolation due to contact tracing, but he did have to sit out the entire second half and overtime against Stanford. If he can stay healthy, this is a scary, scary team that he's leading.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking about at the beginning of the year, before the first game even kicked off, the whole thing with DTR was we knew that he could have awesome games. You look at what he did against Washington State last year. You knew he had a high ceiling, but his floor was still, at least in terms of what you can expect going into a game, he would have some duds and he'd have some superstar games. Not including the Stanford game when he left with an injury a little bit before halftime. He'd been running the ball well. He was 8 for 12 passing, wasn't getting it downfield, but still 67% completion. Taking that game out of it, his worst passer rating of the year was the season opener against Colorado, 141.6. And he still passed for 300 yards, threw 4 touchdowns, and rushed for another 100 yards. I mean, just as a passer, that was his worst game. So he really raised the floor this year, and that's something good to see. Just before we move on to the next segment, I know we've been talking positively about 3 groups on the offensive side. The quarterbacks, there's pros and cons there. The running backs looking really good. Greg Dulcich and the tight ends looking good. And the offensive line looks good, and they'll mostly be returning next year. That's great. The other side of the ball, Jack, you and I have talked about this a lot. There were some really good things from the defense. Like we like seeing Quantrez Knight. Jay Shaw started really hot. Osa Odighizuwa was an anchor on that defensive line, but the defense kind of faltered down the stretch there. You had some pretty bad defensive games against USC and Stanford, especially in the fourth quarters of those 2 games. So that's not good to see. You are going to be basically retaining your entire defense outside of Osa. So you'll have some consistency there, but at the same time, not a lot of production at the end. I know that the contract situation with Jerry Azzanaro is kind of coming to a head in the next few weeks, but there haven't really seemed to be any rumblings of a change on that side of the ball. So it's kind of a bummer. So Jack, just what do you think is going to have to shake out on the defensive side of the ball for things to improve moving forward?
I mean, honestly, if they just continue to do what they did early on this year and take those lessons that they learned, it's only going to improve them. I mean, yes, everyone's going to point at the USC and the Stanford games where they just got absolutely lit up through the air. And we knew this. We knew the passing defense wasn't going to be that good. I mean, we saw the year before they were basically one of the worst in the nation. So any improvement is
that's one thing.
Yeah, any improvement is a good improvement, right? And a lot of them are coming back, even the grad transfers are able to come back for the next year. So keeping consistency in that group is huge. Brian Norwood gets another year and possibly a spring training to implement a little bit more of his system. That was looking pretty good. The 4-2-5, that should help a lot in the passing game. But I mean, nothing's really going to change if you keep the same defensive coordinator. This has been a problem year after year for Chip Kelly's staff. And it lies with, obviously, Chip Kelly needs to make these changes if he thinks this is a problem, which if he doesn't think this is a problem, then that's a different conversation entirely about what Chip Kelly's seen from this team that we're not seeing. But this just staying consistent with this group of guys is going to help this defense immensely. And, you're not going up against the Keaton Slovis every game. You're not going up against the Davis Mills every game, right? It's obviously when you get to those matchups, you have to pay a little bit more attention. You have to bring it a little bit more. But, in a lot of those early games, even the ones they lost, they were playing well. It was just, the offense was giving up turnovers in bad spots, and you can't really expect to stop them from getting into the end zone every single time if they're starting from, the UCLA 30. So just consistently playing well and coming out every single game and being more aggressive. A lot of times in those USC and Stanford games, they were playing off the ball a little bit. They were playing back. They seemed like they were a different defense than what we had seen from the first few weeks. So I don't know what changed. I don't know if they were just trying to play a little bit more conservatively. But when you have an offense as dynamic as DTR's offenses are that score really quickly or bust out really quickly, you're going to have a very consistent defense to try to win those games. And yes, the defense cost UCLA those last couple games. And if that doesn't change, I don't know. I don't see this team having a winning season.
Yeah, it'll be tough. We'll get around to that when we get the big takeaways and what that means for 2021. But I think step one for improving your defense is making a change and getting rid of Azanaro, because that probably won't happen at this point, or who knows if it will. Then you're basically just hoping that guys like Damian Sellers and John Bonds that they develop, because they got snaps as freshmen. That's great to see even in a shortened season. So guys like that are going to have to really hold down the middle of the field and kind of replace all those senior linebackers who left the year before. So I think they can improve with Azanaro sticking around and the staff staying the same, but you raise your ceiling a little more if you made a switch at defensive coordinator. So we'll move on to the recruiting sphere for UCLA. They got a 4-star defensive end yesterday. I can't pronounce the first name. Tia Oali Sevilla. He is a 4-star out of Las Vegas. He's the highest rated of UCLA's recruits. Only 214 nationally, but a 4-star is a 4-star. That's pretty good for Chip Kelly. And now they jumped from the 30s. Now they are the 28th ranked recruiting class in the country, number 4 in the Pac-12. That's pretty good. That's the best they've had under Kelly since the year that he got here, when it was mostly Jim Mora's class plus a few late ads like Chase Cota and Kaz Allen. So it's good to continue relying on grad transfers. You got Cam Brown, and Texas A&M receiver, Ethan Garbers, we were talking about, quarterback from Washington coming over, and Jordan Heath from Notre Dame, the safety who was previously a 3-star. Brown and Garbers are 4-stars. So even if you're not getting a ton of 5-star talent, you're getting a lot of 4-star talent, a lot of experience, a lot of transfers. Seems to be the Chip Kelly mindset over the last few years, and this is really just it all coming to a head. So, Jack, what are your biggest takeaways from this recruiting class? Maybe if not specific players, just the progression over the last few years, and what do you think it can mean for Chip Kelly's prospects moving forward at UCLA?
I mean, recruiting is very important. Everyone knows recruiting is important. You see teams like Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson every year near the top of the classes, and every year they're the teams that are doing the best. But in a year like next year, we'll see if freshmen don't really have the same impact with a lot of guys coming back, especially grad transfers getting an extra year. A person like DTR could stay an extra year after that. You'll have a lot of depth in these situations. I think this Jordan Brand deal has done a lot of good for UCLA. As much as, Under Armour was a big deal for UCLA, considering the amount of money that they were pouring into the institution, Jordan is just a different brand entirely. Guys want to wear Nike and they want to wear Jordan. These are guys that grew up seeing their heroes on the field in Nike and in Jordan. So I think that's really helped out Chip Kelly, because if we're being honest, Chip Kelly has not been the greatest recruiter. He doesn't even really handle much of the recruiting here at his own school. Whereas, you see guys like a Jim Harbaugh going all out for the recruits. Yes, Michigan hasn't been that good lately, but they're still getting higher recruits every single year. And Michigan obviously is a blue blood in football, but UCLA has Westwood. You get to live in LA. You get to live on the West Coast, nice weather all year. You get to play in a good conference.
And you have Ethan Young.
And you have
Ethan Wizard. It's the Ethan Young show.
Yeah, look, you've got things here. You've got a good situation here. You should be able to recruit really well. You're in a hotbed of talent here in LA. Southern California has a lot of really good football players. You can recruit well in Texas still. There's competition out there, but we've seen guys like Chase Griffin come over. So the fact that they're not better is a little concerning, but the fact that they're continuing to get better is a good sign for Chip Kelly's program. I don't know, Sam, is there anyone specific that's standing out to you right now that you're really looking forward to?
I think that Sevilla and Quentin Somerville, who was a signing day steal from Michigan, like you were talking about, he had been committed there, but there was some stuff up in the air with Jim Harbaugh's staff, and he ended up changing, and he's from Arizona. He committed to UCLA. So UCLA's top 2 recruits are defensive ends. That's awesome. UCLA, they back in 2019, they had been able to get to the quarterback moderately well, not super well, but what pressure they did get was either from Osa Odighizuwa or from outside linebackers like Keyshawn Lucier-South. They really weren't getting like a 3-4 D end pass rush in there. And this year was much of the same. You had Osa on the interior, Tyler Manoa on the interior, both were getting to the quarterback. And then you had Carl Jones, Quantrez Knight, guys like that, the linebackers, safeties, striker guys in the 4-2-5 and getting to the quarterback. But defensive ends at UCLA, I don't think there's been a top tier Pac-12 pass rushing defensive end at UCLA since, I don't know, Tack McKinley. It's been a while. The start of next season will be 5 years since Tack's season in 2016. So he needed that bad. And Devin Kirkwood, I'm obviously interested to see what he ends up doing. He's a 4-star athlete, plays receiver, but they're probably going to use him at safety. That'll be really interesting, considering they do have all their safeties coming back, and Quantrez Knight and Quentin Lake, Blaylock, all those guys coming back. You add Devin Kirkwood, that's going to be really interesting. The number one guy, though, and I think he just has a great story, and I'm really interested to see his role in the offense, is Deshaun Merle. He's a running back from Alabama. He's UCLA's first commit out of the state of Alabama. I mean, they got another DN from Alabama later in the cycle, but when he committed back in May or June, whenever that was, the first recruit they got out of Alabama is like 2008. It's not like it's a recruiting hotbed for there, but they still end up getting a 4-star running back who, if you look at his high school stats or his high school highlights, it's like he's playing Madden on rookie. This guy just all over the field, catching the ball, running the ball, breaking tackles, going to the outside, inside, finding holes. His vision's great. Obviously, he won't be able to have those video game-like numbers at UCLA, especially from day one. And Britton Brown, now that he's coming back, is the expected starter. He'll get most of the carries. But at the same time, I think he has a pretty good shot at being the number 2 running back, even though Keegan Jones and Kaz Allen are coming back. It'll be Britton Brown getting the bulk of the carries, but Deshaun Merle could be that 3rd down back. And he could, as a freshman, he could get like maybe 8, 9, 10 touches a game. I'm really looking forward to see what he does for the offense, how good he is as a receiving back, and how good he is like in between the tackles. So it'll be fun to watch him at the very least, whether or not he's a freshman All-American or just a solid contributor. I know he's going to be entertaining. Got a really fun personality. His commitment video back in the spring was really fun. He's wearing cowboy hats and overalls, all that fun stuff, bringing that Alabama energy to UCLA. Maybe he brings the winning along with him too.
Yeah, and it's great, and we think he could do great things. Who knows? Maybe he does continue to put up those video game numbers, and he's the greatest running back ever in UCLA or college football history. But the best part of that is that he did decommit for a little bit from UCLA, reopened up his recruiting process, and then recommitted to the Bruins. And whether it was because Jordan jumped in, that was kind of in between his time was when Jordan jumped in. There was rumors that he might be going to Penn State. Obviously, he lives in SEC country, so that's a huge deal to steal from someone from there. But it really just speaks to the brand of UCLA, because this isn't a winning program in recent years, but it's still got some blood in it. You've still got something there that people are attracted to and that they want to come here to Westwood to play. And whether it's playing in the Rose Bowl every single week or, playing for a coach like Chip Kelly, it's a good sign that they're able to recruit guys like this and keep hold of them. When I thought he was gone, it looked really bad. It looked like UCLA might drop from the top 50 recruiting classes.
Same thing with Kirkwood. And came back.
Yeah, and if those guys weren't going to come, you might as well just throw the year away. I mean, obviously UCLA has a lot of guys coming back, and so who knows how much these freshmen are going to play. But you need reinforcements. You need guys to get into the system right away.
Yeah, and I just want to look at it in the Pac-12 scope of things before we move on to the last topic here. They're ranked 4th in the conference. They're 1 spot behind Cal. That's not good. UCLA should be recruiting better than Cal. But if you look at it, both have 18 commits. UCLA is 3 4-stars and 15 3-stars. Deshaun Merle is under a 3-star, but different sites have him rated as a 4-star, so whatever. Cal has 4 4-stars and 14 3-stars, so they're pretty much neck and neck with Cal. I think if this program is living up to its full potential, it should be just behind Oregon and USC as a recruiting powerhouse. They should be ahead of Cal and Washington and Stanford, which for the most part they already are. So that's good to see that even without winning, there's still enough of an attractive culture to get those guys from Nevada and Arizona and Texas and Alabama. So it's promising. Maybe a winning season next year. If Chip Kelly sticks around, they can jump into the top 20. Who knows? Maybe they get into the top 20 this year. There's still 2 4-stars out there who they could grab. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. Moving on to this last, we're going to sum up our overall takeaways from 2020, success, failure, what it means for 2021, who we think is going to break out next year. I already talked about Burton Brown. He had a great end of the season. I think he'll be maybe one of the best running backs in the Pac-12 going into 2021. But Jack, give me your kind of breakout player for next season, or your biggest takeaways from 2020, either one.
All right, well, we'll start with breakout player from next year. And it was a guy that he did well this year, but I think next season, with the full year under his belt, kind of getting used to the system, it's going to be Bo Calvert. He looked really good this last year at times, and the year before he had to sit out most of the year, but he came back for one game and kind of lit it up. If this defense is going to do really well, and if they're going to really adopt that 4-2-5 system, you need good linebackers, and Bo Calvert is my guy. If I have to take one thing away from 2020, it's that the Bruins can be a winning program, but they need to step it up mentally. It was just a lot of mental mistakes that cost them, whether it was from the coaching staff, whether it was from the players, whether it was just in their conditioning, whether it was who knows how they got in contact with COVID, but 9 guys having to sit out for 2 weeks really killed this team. I mean, yes, they won the game against Arizona and they put up a good fight against Oregon, but imagine if they had all those guys there with them. Who knows what the outcome of those games would be. So just stepping it up mentally can take this team from a 3-4 team, or as we've seen in the past, 3-9, 4-8 team, to an 8-4, 9-3 team that's competing for the Pac-12 South and is really competing with USC for the victory bell. Sam, who's your guy and what's your biggest takeaway from 2020?
So I like I was saying, Burton Brown earlier, I think he's going to be one of the best running backs in the Pac-12. Bo Calvert's another good one. I think he was still getting used to the position that he was playing in this year in the 4-2-5, but also the 4-3, kind of going back and forth. He clearly has the athleticism and the talent, but he's making some bad reads now and then. The full offseason working with Norwood and Azanaro or whoever the new defensive coordinator is, I think that'll be good for him. I'm going to have to go with maybe not a breakout player, but someone I think has a pretty good chance at stepping up. I'm going to go Ebo. He was a grad transfer from Stanford this year. He's coming back for his final year eligibility. He was kind of shaky this year. He was getting picked on a lot when he was on the field. And that's not what you really expect from a fifth-year guy. He's a veteran. But he was dinged up with some injuries. I trust that he's definitely in the right headspace. He's mentally there. He's athletic enough and talented enough that give him a full year with this team. I think he's going to be a huge part of the secondary, which is going to be really experienced all across the board. And then takeaways from the season as a whole, it's a season of what if. And, I mean, you almost come back against Colorado. You almost beat Oregon. You're either a long field goal away from overtime or a non-pick six that the first half buzzer away from winning that game, whatever it is. And then the USC games, Stanford games are just heartbreakers. You really should have won. That shows me that I like we said, you're really only losing Demetrius Felton, Osa Odighizuwa. No one else is declared for the draft, and it doesn't seem like they will. No one else has put their name in the transfer portal, or at least publicly, so that's good to see. The team is going to be very much the same, and I think better next year. And the fact that you were this close to a 7-0 season, that's great. Like you said, I expect them to be contending in the Pac-12 South, and that's good news. I know USC will almost always have more talent. Utah is going to be better coached than UCLA, but the balance, the aura around this program, the feelings, everything, they're going to be contending for the Pac-12 South title. Not going to say they're a college football playoff team, but hey, if you win the Pac-12 South, all you have to do is win one game to win the Pac-12, and then you're in a New Year's Six Bowl. It's crazy. I know that 3 losing seasons from Chip Kelly, and I'm still dumb enough to expect a New Year's Six Bowl. That's how much I'm drinking the Kool-Aid right now. A 3-4 season, and I have so many positives from it. I don't understand why I'm like this, but I am. So it is what it is. I am overly confident about this team, but here we are. On paper, something good should eventually happen from this awful Chip Kelly deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's a new year. They have a new opportunity to really show that they're a team that belongs. And I mean, you talk about a New Year's Six Bowl. I just want a bowl game, man. I just want to see them play.
Oh, I mean, I would take the Netflix, Chick-fil-A, Cheez-It, Pepsi Bowl. I don't care. I mean, I know those are mostly good ones or made up ones, but I'll take a made up one. I'll take a new nonsense bowl. I'll take like the pencil sharpener bowl. I'm fine with that.
I guess. I mean, you know, obviously you want to see them compete in a place like the Rose Bowl, but if this program wants to really turn it around and show that they belong, you have to start winning. You have to start with winning seasons before you start with overall just world-breaking years.
Yeah, makes sense. So that'll do it today for this episode of Bruin Dash. Just want to say you can follow us on Twitter at DashSportsTV or go online and find clips and full episodes at DashSports.tv. You can follow me on Twitter at Sam Connon. You can follow Jack at Jack C. Perez. So that's all for this episode. We'll be back same time next week talking mostly Bruin basketball. There's a lot of stuff going on, whether it's the rankings, the 3-0 start in Pac-12, Chris Smith injury. We'll break it all down along with the Arizona games coming up this weekend. So, Jack, looking forward to talking to you again next week, and thanks for hopping on today.
See you later, Sam. Can't wait for it.
All right. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.